Greetings, travelers! Welcome back to Tales from the Enchanted Forest with your hosts, Fox and Sparrow.
Hiya, travelers! Welcome back. I'm so glad we get to continue this story today.
Yes, if you missed part 1, we are diving into the Trojan War. And what I thought was going to be one episode turned into 2 episodes, and now I think this is going to be a 3-part series. Part 1 was all about the House of Sparta and these prophecies that Zeus had regarding the end of mankind, or at least Thanos saying mankind. So in part 1, we dove into the myth surrounding Helen of Troy. We also covered why Paris is going to be involved with the Apple of Discord, and we'll jump into that today. So what did you think of part 1, Sparrow?
I loved it. We had a lot of family drama, which is what a lot of Greek myths are known for. Even when you think it's not going to be a family drama, people will be related in ways where you're like, yes, okay, so now this is family drama.
Oh my God. At one point when I was writing the script for part 2 and 3, I had to just pull out pieces of paper and start building family trees to be like, oh, this is this guy who's related to this guy. And this guy did this, which impacted this person, which led to the curse on this family. It all makes sense.
Yeah, it's just confusing, but we love it. We love a confusing tale because then it's something we can like untangle and try and understand. Yes. And we have a good old prophecy, which is always a fun trope to be dealing with. There's like so many fun elements here, and we're not even at the main event yet. We're just at like the preamble of the preamble.
This is we are still at the preamble section of the Trojan War. I'm glad you mentioned family drama, because this episode we are covering the drama of 2 families. We are covering the House of Troy, and we are covering the House of Atreus. So House of Troy obviously is going to be all the Trojan royal family, and then the House of Atreus will be about Agamemnon and Menelaus' family, because they also have a big background that plays a part into the lead up to the Trojan War. Everyone does. I feel like everyone's involved some way. It's like the end game of all of the Greek myths where everyone's involved. Everyone has a stake in this, which is what makes it so interesting, obviously.
You see, you went to Avengers Endgame. My head went to Spy Kids 3 at the end when they were like, yes, bring in everybody! And then you got that screenshot where it was clear not all the actors were in the studio on the same day and were just very much photoshopped in with each other.
But honestly, I think Spy Kids, that was the first time where I think 3D made so much sense.
Right?
Because when the robots came out, and then all of the actual, the actors, the characters, they had to put on the glasses to see the robots as well. I remember being in the theater, and I was like, this is insane. This is technology.
Right?
And I feel like we've kind of lost that with 3D.
It was the first and the last cinema-going experience I ever had where you actually had the classic red and blue 3D glasses. After that, they figured out the newer version, which we have now.
Yeah, the black ones, I think.
Yeah.
It's such a shame.
Which are fine, but...
No, but there was something about, having those, the little, flimsy paper ones.
Right.
And then you just put them on your face, and you could see, and then you're like, how does this work? And then I remember just finding... I don't watch 3D a lot anymore on 4D and stuff because it hurts my eyes. But I remember at the time, as a child, I was like, this is peak cinema. This is the best thing I've ever seen. This is technology. This is the future. Holograms are next. I was so hyped for all of that.
Yeah. And then when you realize, the glasses got uncomfortable after a while, you're like, maybe not. Maybe just watching it regular is fine.
This paper is not very stable.
But, House of Troy.
So, dear travelers, I hope that you will go see part 1 so that you are all caught up in all the drama. But as a quick little recap, last time we left off, the gods were celebrating the marriage of Thetis and Peleus. From this union, we will have the great hero Achilles. But during their wedding, the goddess of discord showed up, and she threw a golden apple into the crowd, and 3 goddesses decided that they were the worthy owner of this apple. These 3 goddesses were Hera, the queen of the gods, Athena, the goddess of war and wisdom, And you also have Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty, love, and also a war goddess. Zeus did not want to make the choice, and so he sent Hermes to go find someone who would. And that brings us to Prince Paris and the House of Troy. Prince Paris wasn't even supposed to be alive. Actually, his father wasn't supposed to be alive either. To understand this, we must go all the way back to the foundations of the House of Troy, which was started by Zeus and Electra. From their lineage came Tros, who fathered Ilias, and another son called Ganymede. The myth of Ganymede is really well known. He was so beautiful that Zeus carried him off to be his water bearer, and now he's the star symbol Aquarius. And in exchange, he gave Ilias 2 divine horses. Ilias was a great king, but his son, King Laomedon, was a completely different story. The king had once promised the swift horses of Troy to Heracles and Telamon if the 2 heroes would help slay a sea monster that was attacking the city. Why was a sea monster attacking the city? And why was there a great plague in Troy? Well, the king had hired Apollo and Poseidon to build the great walls of Troy. However, he didn't pay them, which I'm all about,
What?
good handyman work. So if the 2 gods did shoddy work, keep the payment until they do better. But these are 2 gods we're talking about. And Laomedon decides that he's not going to pay them for their work.
Like, if you're... pay people for the work they do.
Yes.
Like, straight up. But if you are going to snub someone for whatever terrible reason that is, don't do it for the gods.
Yeah.
Like, they're the people who can really mess you up.
Yeah. If you're not going to pay anybody, which you should obviously always pay your bills, but going after 2 gods just seems like stiffing them on the bill. It seems like really, really poor decision making, given that they made the walls. They can just take them down.
Wait, what do you think the bill was? Because this is gods. I'm now thinking about it. They probably had something weird. It probably wasn't like, hey, give me 500 gold.
It's not clear exactly what he had promised them. Obviously, I don't think it was money. I think it was something. He could have promised them those horses as well, the ones that Zeus gave them. So...
My goodness. And then now he's parting ways with them anyways because he has to clean up his problem. Ugh.
Well.
My guy.
So, King Laomedon is now stuck in a city that is being attacked by sea monsters, and also simultaneously all his people have the plague. He does try to sacrifice his daughter Hesione to calm them down, but she ends up being saved by Heracles, and this is when the king thinks that he can trick the hero. He asks him, can you fight those sea monsters and I will give you the swift horses of Troy? Afterwards, Heracles does fight the monster, and Laomedon, notorious for not paying his bills, refused to reward Heracles. So Heracles, the great hero he is, burnt down Troy and killed the king and all his children.
Wow. You didn't pay me, I'm going to burn down your entire city.
You know what? I do appreciate that Heracles does have the I'm going to burn it down mentality.
I mean, he is half divine, so, his Uncle Poseidon there, and Uncle Apollo being like, hey guys, I know I kind of killed your monsters, but I'm going to finish what you guys started.
So you might remember that Heracles is here with his friend Telamon. Telamon is Peleus' brother, if you remember Peleus and Thetis. So he's also part of that whole messed up family lore of Peleus and Telamon accidentally killed their half-brother, and they had to go to different cities to be purged of their guilt. So Telamon ends up with Heracles, and when they fight this monster and they ransack Troy, Telamon really, really, really wants to save Princess Hesione. He thinks she is beautiful, and despite the fact that Heracles reminds him that he has a wife back home, he wants to marry her. Princess Hesione doesn't really have a choice here, but she does make them an offer. She promises to go with Telamon and gift Heracles a golden veil if they leave her youngest brother alive. Her younger brother he wasn't a fighter like the others. He was truly like a really young kid. This is Podarces. And I know I pronounced that wrong, but I'm so sorry. There's different pronunciations everywhere I've looked. For his sister's sacrifice, he changed his name to Priam, meaning the one who was bought. Priam rebuilt Troy and brought it to its current glory. He married Hecuba and fathered Paris, Hector, Cassandra, and if the records are to be correct, 50 other children. And under him, Troy was magnificent.
Wow. Troy owes everything to that bargain she made.
Yes, and I think to honor his sister, Priam changed his name to proudly be known as the one who was bought because it was his sister's sacrifice that meant that their lineage and their heritage could continue in Troy.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's got to be such a crazy burden to carry, to know that like your life was like bought like that.
Mm-hmm.
Just know like it could have so easily gone another way.
Yes. And Priam, I think in general, is regarded as a good king, a good father. He is very, very kind to Helen of Troy, we'll see later, but he is considered a good person as well. So he really did honor the sacrifice his sister made, except he made one mistake. He fathered a prince called Paris. Paris was indeed born a prince, but he was not even a few hours old when he was whisked out of the halls of Ilium and sent up on Mount Ida to die. You see, his mother, Queen Hecuba, had a dream that was a prophecy for the baby she carried in her belly. She dreamed that Paris was a flaming torch. Unable to kill the baby themselves, Queen Hecuba and King Priam sent the baby with their chief herdsman to be sacrificed so that the city would be spared. Now, I don't know about you, but a lot of children in these stories get sent up mountains to die, and they don't end up dying, and then it comes back to bite everyone later. In a good way or a bad way.
Yeah. Maybe just try and raise the kid as best you can instead of just being like, you know what? We'll just kill him. It's fine. You never know what's going to happen, guys.
So this is the problem with these prophecies. If you try and fight it, that often ends up making it come true. If you try to ignore it and just live your life like normal, this prophecy will come true anyway. It's kind of like if you've ever seen That's So Raven.
Yeah.
It's like That's So Raven. Every time she tries to fight a prophecy or something, one of her visions, it comes true anyway, because all of the things she did to avoid it made it happen.
It's like destiny.
Mm-hmm.
The prophecy knows if you're going to be inactive or active against it.
And of course, the herdsman couldn't bear to kill the sweet baby, and so he just left him to die of neglect and natural causes. Unfortunately for literally everyone involved, a she-bear took care of the baby, and when the herdsman returned 9 days later, he found the baby alive and well. He took this as a sign that the gods had blessed this baby, and so he raised it as his own. And even from a young age, it was obvious that Paris was different. He was beautiful, and there was something about him that seemed princely, you could say. He even married a nymph called Ione, and she had the powers of prophecy, so she knew that he would break up with her, but she loved him so much that she married him, and she told him to come to her if he ever needed healing. She was still salty about it, though.
Wow, I'm not sure if I could do that. If I know I guess there's a lot of stories, like, it's important that you love and rather than not love at all, but it's like, that'd just be so hard to know that was going to end badly.
Yeah. I feel like it's one of those things where if you knew something was going to end, would you still pursue it anyway with relationships? Like, if you could get the expiry date.
It depends on what they mean by end. If, like, the person were to, like, pass away or something, it's like, well, of course. But if it's like, they're going to break up with me to be with this other girl, it's like, I don't know. I don't know if I could do that.
I don't know if I could do that and say, listen, I will take care of you if you ever need it. I'd be like, go be with her.
Yeah. Yeah, like, have fun. This has been your choice. Bye.
Now, one of Paris's friends on Mount Ida was a boy called Aeneas. In one version of this myth, and in the Homeric hymns to Aphrodite, Zeus has enough of Aphrodite's vanity. And so he has Hermes steal an arrow from Eros, and he strikes Aphrodite while she's looking at an ordinary cowherd. However, Mount Ida seems to be littered with Trojan royals because this random ordinary cowherd was also related to the Trojan royal family. I am talking about Anchises. He is a cousin to Priam, the current king of Troy, which makes Paris and Aeneas cousins, but they don't know about this just yet. This is a little bit odd. The fact that Zeus would strike Aphrodite with an arrow and hit an ordinary cowherd when he was trying to humiliate her, but the cowherd ended up being a royal. It's confusing if this was the luck of the draw, if you strike randomly on any mountain, will you hit an abandoned royal? Or in this case, was Zeus doing it on purpose? We don't know. We just know that the attempt was supposed to humiliate Aphrodite by making her fall in love with this completely ordinary man who wouldn't be worthy of her. But it does seem to be that the long-term game of Aeneas, because Aeneas is the one who is alive at the end of Troy. When Troy's burnt, he flees, and he's the one that goes on the voyage and essentially starts what will be Rome. So is this the long game, or is this just very, very lucky?
I think this is very, very lucky. I really like to think that Zeus is not thinking things through. And I think it's just funnier to view it that way.
I don't know. And that's one of the questions that we ask a lot during the series is, why did this god do this? And I think the answer is maybe it was on purpose, maybe it was by accident. Who knows?
Yeah.
So one of Paris's favorite pastimes was bullfighting, and he had a great champion bull. It gained lots of traction, enough so that Paris felt really confident about his bull's abilities. And so he set a challenge that any bull that could beat his would be given a golden crown. There are lots of different versions of this myth, but we're going to keep it very short and just say, having nothing better to do, apparently, the god of war, Ares, decides to transform into a bull and take up the challenge. When he wins, Paris gives him the crown easily. And it's that kind of judgment that makes Paris the perfect contender to judge the three goddesses.
Oh, interesting. We also know he's smart enough to pay people after he promised that he would.
Breaking the curse of the House of Troy.
Exactly.
So, when the gods were looking for a fair judge, they came upon Paris. The three goddesses and Hermes appeared before him, and Paris was in complete awe. He had never seen such beauty, power, or divinity before. And to be honest, he didn't know where to look. He didn't know if he was allowed to look. He didn't know if he was supposed to cover his eyes. But they told him that they were there for him to look at them and judge them and to decide who should get the golden apple. He was swayed by each, and so to make it interesting, each goddess offered him a different bribe. Hera offered him Asia and Europe. Athena offered him might in battle and never losing any war that he was in. And Aphrodite offered him love of the most beautiful woman on earth, Helen of Sparta. She did omit the fact, of course, that Helen was married, but nonetheless, she offered him Helen of Sparta.
Wow. What options here?
The problem is, you know that whichever one you choose, the other two goddesses are going to go against you. And we've seen Hera, like what she did to Heracles, driving him mad, making him kill his own family. Like, they can do pretty damaging things to a human. So in this case, I don't think Paris was thinking it too thoroughly, because he was dazzled by Aphrodite's beauty and the image of love, and so he gave the apple to Aphrodite. This solidified her as his ally, while the other two goddesses left, both to side with the Greeks. And as much as this would be a battle of men, it would also be a battle of the gods. So the plan was set in motion, and Paris set sail to Sparta to claim his prize.
Like, she'd even bring Helen to him. He had to go and find her.
She did lead Paris along the way. But
okay.
He had to go get Helen because Helen was, of course, in Sparta with her family.
I just thought this would be like an Amazon service, you know? Just bring you what you asked for.
Well, there will be a lot of that later on. But here, he has to go get her himself. So Helen, Menelaus, and their daughter Hermione welcome the Trojan envoy, not thinking anything of the young prince with them. Menelaus had to travel to Crete, and so he left his wife and the visitors behind. This is the part where we get dicey. So with the help of Aphrodite, Helen fell in love with Paris. They ransacked Menelaus' treasures before setting sail, and they left. This is a huge violation of the rules of hospitality, namely called xenia, which Menelaus sometimes seems more upset about than the loss of his wife. Basically, this rule of hospitality is super important to Greek society, Greek myth, and it is credited as one of the reasons why Paris and the Trojans were doomed to fail from the start. Because when you are in a host-guest relationship, that is sacred. And if you break it, it will lead to divine punishment. And we see this in Greek myths time and time again. Those who break this rule, who break the rules of hospitality, are either struck down by Zeus or they have bad things happen to them because of it. And with the abduction of Helen, this is really contested about will. So the idea that with the help of Aphrodite, Helen fell in love with Paris makes you think that it was, an arrow that made her fall in love with him against her own will. And it does make sense to me because I think Aphrodite, she would make it as simple as possible for her to take Helen. And if she is the goddess of love, then she could just make Helen fall in love with Paris.
Yeah.
And of course, this would obviously cause contention with Helen and Aphrodite because in the Iliad, which we'll talk about next episode, we see this aggressive relationship between Helen and Aphrodite where she seems angry and bitter, but the language used does make it seem like Helen went willingly. A lot of the ancient writers do write that Helen chose to go. Helen willingly left. And in fact, when she goes to Troy, she maintains her rank. She doesn't go as Paris's concubine. She goes as his wife. And then when she does arrive in Troy, it's not like people tell her, oh, what are you doing here? They seem besotted by her and they accept the relationship. So whether or not Helen chose to go or not is one of those controversial Greek myth questions. It could be that she chose to go and then changed her mind once she saw the effect of what happened. It could be that she didn't choose to go and that she was forced to go by Aphrodite. And once she got to Troy, Aphrodite stopped trying to, manipulate her. And so she could see clearly that this was wrong. Either way, Helen ends up in Troy. So does Paris care that he is about to break the laws of hospitality, steal a woman from her family, bring calamity to the Trojans? Not so much. Menelaus is in Crete when he receives a message from the goddess Iris telling him about what had just happened. And so he goes to his brother Agamemnon, the king of Mycene. And they are both angry, but Agamemnon does, in some texts, it does seem like he takes this as an opportunity to show the might of the Greeks and to claim Troy and ransack it. And remember, all of the suitors had promised that Menelaus would be safe, Helen would be safe, and if anyone took Helen away or did anything to Helen, that they would all go to war against that person. I think at the time of this oath, they had all thought it would be one of them, one of the Greeks, but it's not. It is Paris of Troy. The two brothers are fuming and trying to figure out what to do. And Menelaus wonders if this was all because of the curse. What curse, you may be asking? Is it the one that Zeus has set to kill half of all humankind? Nope. Is it the one that Tyndareus, the king of Sparta, received for forgetting to worship Aphrodite? Nope, also not that one. Could it be the curse on the House of Troy for not paying Apollo and Poseidon and then also not paying Heracles? No. You see, Agamemnon and Menelaus also had their own cursed bloodline to reckon with. And it all started with King Tantalus. So in earlier sources, his crime was that he asked Zeus to be treated like a god. And in later sources, the reason why he was punished is because he killed his son and fed him to the gods as a test. Naturally, the gods caught on quite quickly that they were eating a person, and so they punished Tantalus, and so he's never allowed to taste food or drink water. In some cases, his punishment is that he has a giant feast in front of him, but there's also a rock hanging over him. So he can never enjoy the feast because the rock could fall at any moment. As for the son, they revived him. His name is Pelops, and he is so beautiful when he's revived that for a time he ends up living in Olympus with Poseidon as his lover.
Whoa.
Unfortunately, he does get kicked out of Olympus, and so he has to enter the world and try and make a name for himself. At first, he tries to fight Iliad of Troy, and that fails. So he set sail and he landed in Pisa. There, he fell in love with Princess Hippodamia, but he had a different problem to reckon with: her father. Her father had been given a prophecy that his son-in-law would kill him, so he came up with a plot to kill all potential suitors first. Anyone who wanted Hippodamia's hand would have to win against him in a chariot race. If they lost, he would kill them. And he killed a lot of them. There were spikes with human heads on them all over the place. But Pelops was not deterred. He begged Poseidon for help, and the sea god and ex-lover of the prince sent him 2 fine horses and a chariot. But still, Pelops was unsure. So he bribed the king's charioteer, who happened to be a son of Hermes, for help in exchange for 1 night in bed with the princess and half of the kingdom.
Wow.
Seems like a very lofty promise to make. Like, if you help me marry the princess, you can spend the first night in bed with her, and then you can also have half our kingdom.
Like, also, you've been given, like, a chariot by Poseidon. I would more bank on that than a human being. Like...
Yeah, I would bank on the fact that, maybe my ex-lover is probably going to set me up to win this race, these divine horses, this divine chariot. I mean, the charioteer was like, that sounds like a great deal to me. So he agreed, and he sabotaged the king's chariot, leading to the king's death. Now, he upheld his part of the bargain, so he went to go collect. In a panic, Pelops shoved him off a cliff, and with the charioteer's dying breath, he cursed the house of Pelops and all his descendants.
Oh, jeez.
This curse, known as the curse of the Atreides, would affect Pelops' children, Atreus and Thyestes, and his grandchildren, Agamemnon and Menelaus. And in some traditions, one of his great-grandchildren is Heracles. And Heracles, as we know, had a rough time. So this is a curse. The curse of the Atreides is massive.
I like how this random, charioteer had this powerful curse within him to unleash.
Well, he's also the son of Hermes.
That's true.
He is the son of a god. So his word does hold weight. And he did have a vow. He did make an oath with Pelops. So when he went back on that, that does mean that the curse probably holds weight.
Yeah, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
It's fair.
So Pelops' 2 main sons, Atreus, the father of Agamemnon and Menelaus, and Thyestes, had a very difficult relationship. They killed their half-brother, they took over the throne of Mycene, and they proceeded to seduce each other's wives, kill each other's kids, and in one instance, Atreus took a page out of Tantalus's book and fed Thyestes his own son.
Ew.
Seeking revenge, Thyestes consulted with an oracle who told him that the only way to get revenge would be to father a child with his own daughter.
Oh. Who's revenge on who in that scenario?
So he wants to get revenge on his brother, because these 2 brothers are going at it. These 2 brothers do not like each other. They are fighting for the throne, and they are doing despicable things with each other. And so apparently the best way for him to get revenge was to have a baby with his daughter, and then maybe that baby would get revenge for him, was the oracle's plan. Whatever the plan was, the daughter had a baby, Augustus, and unfortunately for her, she decided she was going to abandon the baby, and the baby ended up being adopted by none other than Atreus, the uncle. So this child, Augustus, grew up, and he learned that his uncle was actually his grandfather, and the person he thought was his father wasn't. So he killed Atreus, and he exiled Agamemnon and Menelaus out of Mycene. Well, Agamemnon, as we know, he rises to power, he conquers the lands, and eventually he reconquers Mycene, which is where we are today. And this curse of the Atreides can very well be to blame for Menelaus' misfortune. His wife runs off with a young Trojan prince, the very wife who had given him the status of king of Sparta in the first place. And Agamemnon is there to try and console him. But we shouldn't pity Menelaus for too long. His fate would be much, much kinder than that of his brother, especially when it comes to his wife Clytemnestra, who had also now inherited the curse as well. So Menelaus and Agamemnon start gathering their army, which included a host of Grecian kings and warriors like Nestor. There are some who did try to avoid being recruited, like Odysseus, having learned that his journey home would be delayed severely, tried to act insane. And Achilles, son of Thetis and Peleus, was hidden away by his mother and disguised as a woman. However, both ended up being caught, and they joined the rest of the Greeks. We'll take a second just to talk about Achilles because he is super important. He is, if you remember from the prophecy, he's supposed to be greater than his father, and he will either lead a short, glorious life or a dull, long one. This is probably why his mom tried to hide him, because if he went to war, it was likely that he would have a glorious life, but a short one.
Mm-hmm.
As a baby, Thetis either dipped him in the river Styx to grant him immortality, or she tried to throw him into a fire. It's not always clear which way he gets it. And we do have this idea of Achilles' heel because there was the one part that she didn't get to cover. This does seem to come from sources later than the Iliad and not the Iliad itself. In the Cyrpia, which is one of our main sources, there is no mention of Achilles having divine immortality, and he does get injured in the Iliad itself. So just keep that in mind for the Iliad itself. It's not clear that he's immortal, but he's definitely divine, in the same way that Helen is divine. It also adds the fact that Agamemnon's seer tells the king that there would be no victory without Achilles. So they recruit him, and the Greeks all gather together. And if you're keeping track, no god or goddess has been offended in the last 5 minutes. So it's time for a quick side quest. While in dock, there is much feasting and hunting happening amongst the Greeks. The atmosphere is electric. They are one of the greatest fleets, one of the greatest hosts assemble, and they are about to take on Troy. Except while hunting, Agamemnon shoots and kills one of Artemis's sacred stags. And Artemis is furious.
Ooh.
Were the stags labeled? No. Were they clearly marked in a gods-only zone? No. But Agamemnon should have known. As punishment, Artemis convinces Aeolus, the winds, from blowing, and suddenly the entire atmosphere shifts. No winds means no sailing. No sailing means no war. Their horses need food, their supplies will rot, their motivation will completely dwindle if they cannot set sail and sack Troy. So Agamemnon's seer has another prophecy, and he says the only way to appease Artemis would be the sacrifice of Agamemnon's own daughter, Iphigenia. Agamemnon immediately calls for the host to be disbanded. He's like, okay, everyone go home. We're not doing that. Everyone just pack up, go. We're going away. Artemis can be mad. We're not doing this.
Wow.
Well, the only two people that really heard this prophecy were Agamemnon and Menelaus. Menelaus would not be deterred. He said that they had come all this way. They'd gathered everyone up. They were already on the way. What was one death? Agamemnon initially refused, but eventually he did agree. So Agamemnon and Clytemnestra, and if you remember, Clytemnestra is Helen's sister, they had 3 daughters. The eldest was Iphigenia. They also had one son, Orestes. So Agamemnon didn't send a letter to his wife telling her to prepare their daughter for a sacrifice. Instead, he sent her a letter telling her to prepare their daughter for marriage. He wrote to Clytemnestra to prepare their daughter to be the bride of Achilles and come at once. Euripides' play on Iphigenia shows some of the torment Agamemnon must have felt as he sent that letter, and he tries to send a second letter that says, you know what, forget it, we'll get them married later, don't come, stay home, don't come here. Unfortunately, the second letter is intercepted by Menelaus, and it is too late. Clytemnestra arrives with her daughter, and she is excited. She arrives and she asks her husband, who's Achilles? Who are his parents? What is he related to? Like, where is he the king of? And she learns that he is related to Thetis and Peleus, and that he will be the king of the Myrmidons. And she's like, wow, okay, this is great. But she notices that her husband is acting odd. He tells her to go home, and now that she's delivered their daughter, she can go. But Clytemnestra refuses. She says that out of doors is his domain, but indoors is hers. And what is her daughter supposed to do without her mother there to guide her on her wedding day? This turns into a bit of a mess when she runs into Achilles, who has no idea what marriage she is talking about. And soon they both realize what's really happening. She didn't bring her daughter here to be a bride. She brought her daughter here to be a sacrifice. Clytemnestra and Achilles both fight for Iphigenia. Achilles is ready to defend the girl until his last breath. And it's argued that he doesn't do this out of love for Iphigenia or anything like that, but because Agamemnon has used his name in a trick, in a ploy. And you will see, if you read the Iliad, Achilles and Agamemnon go at each other constantly. Achilles often feels like Agamemnon doesn't give him the respect he deserves, that Agamemnon tries to trick him. In turn, Agamemnon, I think, realizes the weight that Achilles holds as one of the greatest warriors, and that victory does depend on Achilles. But he's also proud because he's supposed to be the leader, the king of kings in this situation, of this expedition. But it's very clear that Achilles is the best hero there.
Mm-hmm.
So they're fighting. The others realize that what's going on, and they quickly realize that this is supposed to be the way to get Artemis to back off. And so Agamemnon argues that if they don't sacrifice Iphigenia, the other Greeks will kill him and their entire family as a way to get Artemis to be happy again. Iphigenia hears everyone arguing, and she accepts the sacrifice, and she says she'll do it. She walks the altar, ready to be killed to provide safe passage to the Greeks. However, in some versions, as the seer is about to slice her neck, the knife touches her skin, she disappears, and instead a stag lays dead on the altar. It seems that Artemis accepted her sacrifice, but not her death, and so she becomes one of Artemis's huntresses.
Honestly, good deal for her. Get out of there.
Yeah, I feel like getting out of there is great.
Yeah, you're just like, whoo, what a close call.
I mean, Achilles would probably be a not so great husband, given that he's about to have a very short, glorious life.
Yeah, for sure. This is kind of the best case scenario for her.
Now, whether or not Iphigenia is killed or sacrificed or not sacrificed, this was it for Clytemnestra. Her husband set sail with the Greeks using the wind her daughter's loss bought them, and she starts planning. She wanted to make Agamemnon pay for what he did. So she returned home and she waited for 10 years. And she plotted and she wondered and she hoped that he would come home alive so that she could take care of him. And during this time, her husband's cousin, Agestus, returns home. Now, this is the one that initially kicked the two brothers out of Mycene. And then when Agamemnon became a conqueror, he went back and took it. And so he also has a problem with Agamemnon. They both wanted Agamemnon dead, and over time they started engaging in a love affair of sorts. And they knew that when and if Agamemnon returned from war, they were going to give him what he deserved and take the kingdom for themselves. And with that, we end the preamble to the Trojan War. The setup is really long, I will give you that, but it is so important to understand the different family lines and just how cursed every single one of these people are. These curses go back generations. And it's all to set the stage for the Trojan War. And so lineage is important here. It's not that important that you remember, exact details of everyone's history, but it is important to remember that everyone's cursed. Helen and Clytemnestra are cursed by Aphrodite, but Helen also has the added bane of being used by Zeus to bring about the destruction of mankind. Their husbands, the sons of the House of Atreus, have inherited a curse of their own. Achilles' prophecy means he'll die a short, glorious life. Paris's prophecy means that he's about to bring on the destruction of Troy, and everything is about to fall apart.
Hashtag cursed.
And that is the end of part 2 of our Trojan War series, dear travelers. If you do want to hear part 3, be sure to check that out. But until then, the best place to see us is on our website, www.talesfromenchantedforest.com, or on our social media sites like Bluesky, where you can find us as @FromEnchanted or under the podcast name. However, if you are old school like Sparrow, then please do send us an email at talesfromenchantedforest@gmail.com. We'd love to connect, hear your suggestions, and answer any questions.
And remember, there's always a place for you in the Enchanted Forest.